If you're looking for a solid, safe, dividend paying stock you want to hold for the long term, there's a couple interesting things that you should be thinking about. Obviously, there's the first thing, the dividend, its growth, if it's going to beat inflation, how it compares to its peers. But there's also how the company specifically plans on maintaining and growing that dividend to beat inflation and help you grow your dividend snowball in the future. And when you find a company that has a long track record of maintaining and growing good dividends and has a very detailed plan on how they're going to maintain those dividends and grow in the future, you jump on it. Today's company we're talking about is Fortis. Welcome to Golden Arch Investing. My name is Liam. On this channel, we love to talk about Canadian investing. Today's company, Fortis, it's a utility company. It's all over North America, and it has a couple of key advantages that make it one of the most textbook dividend growth stocks I have ever seen. And so I'm really excited to share with you the story of this company. We're going to break this into a couple of parts. We'll talk about some numbers. So we'll talk about like what exactly does Fortis do? We'll talk about what their revenues look like, what their earnings look like, their profitability numbers. And then we're going to jump into sort of what their plan is for the future, how they're going to maintain that dividend and their sort of dividend focus for the future. And then obviously at the end, I'll give a couple of thoughts. And if you like this kind of content, you're interested in Canadian investing, please do hit the subscribe button and like the video. It means a huge amount and doesn't cost anything. So let's start off with a little bit of the story of Fortis. And I've got some notes here on the screen. They're a North American regulated utility company, like I mentioned a moment ago. They're headquartered in St. John's, and they date all the way back to 1885. So this is not a new company. This is older than my province out in the West, and not quite as old as the country, but just about, right? This is very old, has been running for a long time. They have expanded massively over the years. They're all across North America. They've got segments of their business in many provinces and states. In the most recent quarter that I have data for, they're looking at revenues of $11.4 billion. So a big utility company. Looking at net earnings, $1.2 billion, which represents an EPS of 85 cents a share. So a solid, profitable company, good quarterly revenues, good quarterly earnings, solid EPS. All important things to look at when you're looking at a dividend payer and you're thinking about it from the perspective of a dividend investor. A big important thing that I saw like right away when I looked at Fortis, and I'll try to throw this on the screen for you guys, but they have a 2025 to 2029 capital plan that specifically shows how they are going to support a 6.5% annual growth of their what they call rate base, which is sort of like their core customers, the core amount of people using their regulated utility, and sort of the base earnings, the base revenue that they can count on. This is important because it outpaces their dividend growth rate. So it's in that 6.5%. The dividend growth rate, depending on what time period you're looking at, isn't quite there. So they're showing they have a plan for their base, not their total, but their base revenues to outgrow their dividend in the next 5 years at least, but again and again in perpetuity. They also have very detailed plans about how exactly their expansion is going to be done. They talk about being safe and smart with their money and how all of the money they spend directly benefits shareholders. So this company is laser focused on how can we be the safe option for these shareholders. How can we make sure these shareholders can believe in us forever? This is an ideal sleep well at night stock. This management team is specifically thinking about you, the sleep well at night investor who just wants to put some money down. They don't want to follow all the earnings, right? You just want to sort of have that passive investing effect, but you're going to pick specific companies. This is ideal for that. Their EPS growth, I do want to point out, pretty impressive. So the way they've been able to sort of, I'm not going to say improve necessarily, but definitely the way they've been able to cut down on expenses in their business has been big. And their specific sort of expenses and growth, obviously well managed. So let's talk a little bit about the dividend, right? So, what are they doing to sort of show themselves as an awesome dividend stock? Where does all this potential come from? I think there's a couple of opportunities here, and I really do think that the current dividend is an opportunity. They're paying out about 4% right now, which might not be huge, but they are growing that dividend by about 6%. So a solid payment that is growing above inflation. That is huge. That's really important if you are a dividend investor for the long term. If you want to just sort of accumulate shares, you're looking at maybe a dividend reinvestment until you need the income and you want to believe in this company. Well, having that dividend outgrowing inflation is huge. It also means that if you're going to buy this company and use this dividend as part of a retirement portfolio, which I think most people that are looking at companies like this are looking for, you can trust that their dividend is going to beat inflation. You're never going to have that total revenue that's coming in, your income that you're getting from your portfolio. You're never going to have that dropping below the sort of rate of inflation, at least not with Fortis. This is not a super high yielder, obviously, but it is a really solid, safe stock. And I do want to point out a couple of things. One of the things I have on here is that this is a dividend king. Now, I don't know if this is just me, but I sometimes think we throw that, either the word dividend aristocrat or dividend king around with a little too much weight. We've seen a lot of dividend aristocrats, dividend kings fail. I mean, just this last week, we had Walgreens cutting their dividend. That was obviously a well-lauded, well-loved dividend stock. And just because you were good at paying your dividends doesn't mean you always will be. You could also end up with these companies like BCE that end up in like yield trap positions because they can't afford the dividend. Well, Fortis focuses on how they can make sure they can still pay this out. They focus on being able to continually safely grow the utility. And it's a utility company. They don't depend on consumer staples like a Walgreens. They don't depend on population trends or economic trends like BCE did. So they don't have those same risk factors that all these other big dividend payers might. And they do offer a pretty fantastic dividend reward. I just think right away, I'm looking at this and I can just see how well it would fit into like a retirement portfolio, how well it would fit as a dividend reinvestment candidate that you're going to dollar cost average in an RRSP or even a TFSA, and you could just ignore. You could forget you owned this stock for 20 years, and if history is anything to go off of, they would still be there, growing the dividend, growing the utility itself every year. Just a fantastic company. At the end of the day, this is a utility. There's almost no better dividend stock than a utility company. It's almost a bond. It's almost a bond by the amount of stability and with their excellent management, their history of good management, of paying out good dividends. I think this is one that belongs in those retirement style or even that TFSA portfolio. I think it really is a safe, solid pick. And that's about all I have for you folks today. If you like this video, you want to talk more about Canadian stocks, particularly Canadian dividend stocks, but also basically any Canadian stock, please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and let me know. What company would you like me to look into next? What company do you want me to talk about? I love talking about all these different Canadian companies. There are so many industries in Canada that are going to have opportunities like Fortis that I think a lot more investors should be interested in. And I'm going to keep talking about them here on the channel. And with that being said, I really do hope I see you in the next video.